Good morning, sunshine. Usually when my mom said that to me, I went, meh. So you guys are much more awake than I am in the morning. Oh, brother, I love you infinity times much. These are expressions that I grew up hearing over and over and over again. So much so that I can picture the family member who said it, I can hear their voice, and I remember so much more than just one line. My mom, my grandma, oh, my dad. Each of these lines bring back a memory of them. I have stood in this spot many, many times over the last 7 years. I have been honored by the privilege of preaching to you all. And I have been blessed hearing your responses, your reflections, and where the holy is moving in your life, for the holy is truly moving. Usually when I prepare a homily, one of the unhelpful voices of anxiety that is going over and over on repeat is, you've already preached that. Say something new. They'll get bored. Today, on my last Sunday preaching at St. Mark's, that voice has gone silent. Instead, if I may be so bold, I hope that I can choose one of the phrases you may remember me saying. I hope that if you have heard nothing else from me, or if today you remember nothing else that I say, you hear that you are God's beloved child. You are God's beloved child. I am God's beloved child. We all here are God's beloved children. They are God's beloved children. Our family, our friends, our enemies, the person who votes differently than us, the person who seems to be in our life only to annoy us, they are all God's beloved children. This is easy to say, and it is easy to forget. Yet remembering and believing that I am God's beloved child is one of the most faithful ways that I can be in a world that often doesn't make sense to me. It is one of the ways that I can practice hope when it feels like the world breaks my heart again, or overwhelms me, or reminds me how powerless I am. Remembering that I am God's beloved child buoys me when I fall short of following Jesus again and again. You are God's beloved child. What does living these beautiful words, this holy identity, look like? I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should love one another. It looks like Jesus' words. Jesus' words spoken today in the Gospel of John. The words that we just heard Deacon Terry read are Jesus' words that he follows the foot washing with, that he follows his last meal with his followers. Jesus' words that we heard today follow Judas's leaving to betray Jesus. And they start what Jesus says when he wants to say goodbye before his death. Jesus is speaking these words in a time of betrayal and a time before he knows he will suffer. Still, he wants to leave his followers with love. Because to be a follower of Jesus is to remember how Jesus loves us. To be a follower of Jesus is to remember how to commit to loving one another. It is essential to following Jesus after Jesus' death, resurrection, and ascension. And it is essential in following Jesus as much now as it was then. It is the moment after Jesus' death where the women show up at the tomb. It is the moment when Jesus' followers see him and know him sharing a meal. Being a beloved child of God looks like living Jesus' story in our world today. Being a beloved child of God looks like neighbors loving one another, a note of encouragement, presence in pain, food when times are hard. Being a beloved child of God looks like protesting unjust laws, signs that quote our presiding bishop, saying if it's not about love, it's not about God. It looks like movements that protect the dignity and rights of every human being. Being a beloved child of God means renewing, remembering, and living according to our baptismal covenant, seeking and serving Christ in everyone, not just those to whom it's easy. Being a beloved child of God does not excuse us from poor choices. Instead, it means repenting when we have turned away from God's love and being open to seeing the world with new eyes. Being a beloved child of God looks like prayer. Even when all we can pray is being silent. When all we can pray is our lament, when all we can pray is our joy, whatever we can pray, that's what it looks like. Being a beloved child of God does not mean that our pain will go away. It doesn't mean that life from here on out will be easy. It means that we are never alone. Being a beloved child of God means dwelling in God's love to the point where it shapes our imagination and we can't see the world another way. Being a beloved child of God means reminding others that they too are God's beloved children. My prayer for all of us is that we know this, that we live this, and when we forget, we are surrounded by those who remind us that we are God's beloved child.